They say hospitals never really die. The walls may crumble, ceilings may collapse, and weeds may grow through broken tiles, but the memories remain. Some claim they can still hear the cries of patients echoing down long, dark corridors. Others swear that if you press your ear against the peeling paint, you'll hear whispers carried from the past, secrets of suffering, injustice, and lives cut short. This particular hospital was abandoned decades ago, left to rot on the edge of town. Most people avoid it, not because of superstition, but because of history. For years, it was the only place where people of color were taken when better hospitals refused them. Families remember the endless waits, the underfunded wards, the cruel way lives were discarded. Now, it stands hollow, windows shattered, rooms flooded with dust and silence. Yet silence is never complete here. At night, those who pass by swear they hear voices, pleading, warning, and weeping. Some say it's the wind. Others insist it's something darker, the restless souls of those who were neglected and forgotten. And if you dare to step inside, you'll find out that the hospital hasn't finished telling its story. Darius Price had always been fascinated by forgotten places. As a graduate student in history, he specialized in uncovering the stories that polite society tried to bury. Where others saw ruins, he saw archives. Where others saw dust, he saw truth. So when his research led him to the long-abandoned Mercy Hill Hospital, it felt less like coincidence and more like destiny. His thesis focused on the racial disparities in healthcare during the 20th century, stories of black families who were denied entry into hospitals that served white patients, forced instead into underfunded, segregated wards. He had already combed through official records and yellowing newspaper clippings, but paper only told part of the story. He wanted to see the place where it had all happened. He wanted to feel it. Mercy Hill was a looming skeleton on the outskirts of the city, fenced off but not forgotten. Its brick walls were weathered and blackened by time, windows shattered like broken teeth. Trees had claimed the outer grounds, roots pushing against cracked pavement. Locals spoke about it in hushed tones, some recalling relatives who died there, others sharing rumors of strange sounds in the night. Most avoided it entirely. But Darius wasn't most people. Armed with his notebook, a flashlight, and a small recorder, he arrived one gray afternoon. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and rust, as though the building exhaled the memory of years gone by. The fence had a gap, easily wide enough to slip through, and when he stepped onto the property, it felt as though he had crossed into another time. Inside, the air was colder. Paint peeled in sheets from the walls, crunching under his boots. Gurneys lay rusted in hallways, their wheels frozen in place. Faded signs still marked "Colored Ward" and "Negro Patients Only," relics of an era when medicine itself was poisoned by segregation. Darius paused at one of those signs, brushing away the cobwebs. It wasn't just history, it was a wound, carved into the architecture itself. He imagined the men, women, and children who had once walked through those doors, not for healing, but because they had no other choice. His flashlight beam cut through darkness, illuminating rows of empty rooms. In some, broken beds sat crooked against walls. In others, paperwork was scattered, brittle with age. A nurse's station still had files stacked in the corner, folders marked with names that time had tried to erase. Darius set his recorder on, whispering into it, entering Mercy Hill Hospital. Colored Wing. Exploring history through lived space. His voice echoed back, bouncing down the hollow corridor, thin and unnerving. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind through broken windows, seemed amplified in the silence. It was just a building, he told himself. Just a ruin. And yet, as he moved deeper, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. For now, he pressed forward. He was here to document, to uncover what others had chosen to forget. But Mercy Hill had its own way of remembering, and it wasn't through books or files. It was through whispers. Whispers that were waiting for him. Darius moved deeper into Mercy Hill, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the dark. The silence seemed to thicken with every step, pressing in on him like a weight. His recorder caught the crunch of broken glass underfoot, the hollow groan of doors swinging on rusted hinges. Yet there were other sounds too, faint, almost indistinguishable. A cough. A whisper. The shuffle of footsteps that weren't his. He paused at the entrance to what had once been a children's ward. Rusted cribs lined the walls, paint flaking into pale curls. Small toys, long forgotten, lay scattered on the floor, wooden blocks, a doll missing an eye. Darius crouched to pick up a tiny hospital bracelet, the writing on it barely legible, Baby Johnson. A name. A life once lived in this place. He felt a chill as he slipped the bracelet into his pocket. History wasn't abstract here. It was in the air, lingering like smoke. He turned into another hall, where a faded mural stretched across the peeling walls. It had once been colorful, balloons, smiling children, cartoon animals, but time had distorted it into something grotesque. Faces melted where paint had chipped away. The smiles looked more like screams. The deeper he went, the stronger the presence of the past became. In the surgery wing, rusted instruments still littered trays. Old charts were left behind, the ink smeared with water damage. He read fragments aloud for his recorder: patient denied transfer, shortage of supplies, died waiting for physician. Every line carried the same story. Patients segregated, neglected, treated as less than human. And then came the sound. At first it was faint, like fabric brushing against the walls. Then clearer, whispers. Dozens of them, layered atop one another, overlapping and urgent. He froze, gripping his flashlight tight. His breath clouded in the air, though the building was sealed. He followed the sound into a ward lined with rusted beds. The whispers swelled into cries, pleas for help, fragments of prayers, choked sobs. His light swept across the room, catching movement at the far end. For a heartbeat, he thought it was a shadow cast by his own beam. But then it moved the wrong way. A figure stood at the end of the hall, translucent, its features blurred but its posture unmistakably human. Darius's chest tightened. The figure swayed, as though caught in an invisible struggle. And then it was gone, leaving only the echo of a desperate whisper: "Please, don't forget us." His instincts screamed at him to run, but he pressed on, pulled deeper by the voices. He entered the basement stairwell, the air growing colder as he descended. Down here, the whispers sharpened into words. He passed locked doors with peeling labels: morgue, storage, colored patients only. Each word carried the sting of cruelty carved into stone. One door stood ajar, leading into a records room. Papers littered the floor, and Darius knelt to sift through them. Files with names, dates, and causes of death. But what caught his attention was a ledger on the desk, its cover warped with water damage. He opened it, and his blood ran cold. The ledger detailed transfers denied, procedures refused, patients left untreated. Beside each name was a single word, stamped in cold black ink: expired. Children. Mothers. Fathers. People whose only crime was being born the wrong color in the wrong time. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with anguish. Darius clutched the ledger to his chest, his heart pounding. These weren't just stories, these were testimonies. Voices silenced by time, now crying out to be remembered. The temperature dropped again, and his breath came in sharp, fogged bursts. The fluorescent lights above flickered, though the building had no power. Then, slowly, the sound shifted. The cries gave way to something else. Laughter. Low, cruel, mocking laughter. It didn't come from the patients. It came from those who had walked these halls in power. The doctors, the administrators, the ones who had denied care and turned their backs. The echoes of systemic cruelty were just as strong as the cries of the victims. And Darius realized something terrifying: Mercy Hill didn't just hold the memories of the neglected. It held the malice of those who had enforced neglect. Both the oppressed and the oppressors were trapped here, their conflict frozen in time, playing out endlessly in whispers and shadows. A sharp bang echoed down the corridor, like a door slamming shut. Darius jerked his flashlight toward the sound. For a moment, he saw movement, shapes gathering in the dark, watching him. His chest tightened with panic, but a stronger feeling surged beneath it, resolve. He had come here seeking history, but history was alive, demanding to be heard. If he left now, he would be abandoning those voices again. With trembling hands, he switched his recorder back on and whispered into it, "They're here. All of them. They never left." And as he spoke, the whispers surged into a chorus that rattled the walls. The walls of the records room trembled as the chorus of whispers rose into something deafening. Darius pressed his palms to his ears, but it did nothing, the voices were inside him now. His flashlight flickered, casting frantic shadows across the room, and in each shadow he swore he saw faces. The ledger slipped from his hands and landed open on the floor. Pages flipped wildly as though caught in a storm, though the air was still. The names blurred into one another until they formed a single message scrawled across the paper in bleeding black ink, "Stay." The door slammed shut with a metallic shriek. Darius lunged toward it, but the air grew heavy, pinning him in place. His chest burned, his breath short and ragged. He tried to force himself forward, but a figure blocked the doorway. It was clearer than before, no longer a blur, but a man in a tattered hospital gown, his skin pale, eyes sunken. Around his neck, a bruise formed the shape of a noose. His lips moved, but the sound that came was not his voice. It was hundreds of voices, speaking as one, "You will not forget us." The room shifted. The walls stretched higher, the ceiling peeling away into darkness. Rusted beds appeared, lining the space in endless rows, each one occupied by shadowy forms writhing in pain. Some reached out with skeletal hands, their mouths opening in silent screams. Others lay still, their faces etched with despair. Darius stumbled back, his flashlight clattering to the ground. He could feel the despair clinging to him, pulling him down, demanding that he share their suffering. And then the laughter returned. Cruel, cutting, dripping with arrogance. Shapes in white coats emerged from the shadows, doctors and administrators, their eyes cold, their smiles sharp. They carried clipboards like weapons, stamping, "Expired," on invisible papers, waving patients away with dismissive gestures. Their voices rose above the cries, "Unworthy, unfit, not our problem." The scene blurred as the two forces collided, the neglected and the neglectful, locked in eternal battle. Darius was caught between them, pulled in both directions. He could feel the anger of the victims clawing at him, begging him to bear witness, to carry their pain into the world. And he could feel the malice of the oppressors pressing against him, warning him to stay silent, to bury the truth just as they had. The floor cracked beneath his feet, glowing with an otherworldly light. He dropped to his knees, gasping, his body trembling under the weight of their rage. The whispers sharpened into screams, so loud they drowned his own thoughts. And then, silence. He opened his eyes and found himself standing in the surgical theater, the place where operations were once performed. Rusted lights hung from the ceiling, casting a faint red glow. On the table lay a figure covered in a sheet. Slowly, the sheet rose and fell with breath. Darius felt his heart thunder as he stepped closer. With a trembling hand, he pulled the sheet back. It was him. His own face stared back, eyes closed, skin pale, lips slightly parted. His recorder sat on the table beside his body, the red light blinking. The whispers surged again, surrounding him, filling the room. "You are part of this now. You carry us. You cannot leave." Darius staggered back, the edges of his vision closing in. He grabbed the recorder, clutching it like a lifeline. His voice broke as he whispered into it, "I hear you. I will not forget." The room erupted in light, blinding and searing. The figures wailed, the doctors screamed, the building itself groaned as if collapsing under centuries of buried pain. And then, everything went dark. When Darius opened his eyes, the air was still. Dust floated in the thin shafts of light cutting through broken windows. The cries were gone. The laughter, too. Only the faint hum of silence remained, so fragile he was afraid to breathe. He was lying on the cold tile floor of the operating theater. His flashlight flickered nearby, its beam weak but steady. In his hand, the recorder was still running, its red light pulsing softly, as though it too had survived the storm. For a long moment, he stayed there, listening. The hospital felt different. Not empty, but calmer. The air no longer pressed against him. The shadows no longer reached. It was as if Mercy Hill had finally exhaled after holding its breath for decades. Darius sat up slowly, every muscle aching as though he had been carrying the weight of hundreds. He looked at the table where he had seen his own body moments before. Now, it was empty. The sheet lay crumpled, untouched, a relic of his mind or perhaps something more. He pushed himself to his feet, clutching the recorder. Its tape now held more than his observations. It held voices, distorted, faint, but undeniable. Pleas, cries, fragments of testimony. Evidence. Proof that the forgotten were still here, demanding to be remembered. As he retraced his steps through the hospital's broken corridors, he noticed details he had missed before: children's shoes tucked under a bed, a Bible with pages torn but words intact, a mural of bright colors still clinging stubbornly to the wall despite decay. These weren't just remnants of a building. They were fragments of lives, of resilience in the face of cruelty. When he reached the entrance, the evening light poured in, soft and golden. The fence still bore its gap, waiting for him to pass through. He hesitated at the threshold, turning back one last time. The hospital loomed behind him, silent but not dead. And then he understood. Mercy Hill wasn't cursed. It wasn't haunted in the way people thought. It was a witness. A vessel. It held the voices of those who had been silenced because the world outside hadn't wanted to hear them. And it would keep whispering until someone finally listened. Darius stepped into the fading light, the recorder heavy in his hand. He knew his work wasn't just about a thesis anymore. It wasn't about academia, or accolades, or uncovering forgotten facts. It was about responsibility. To carry these voices forward. To make sure they were not erased again. The voices of Mercy Hill were not whispers of the dead. They were a call to the living. A reminder that the systems which neglected them had not disappeared completely, only shifted form. That the silence of indifference could be just as deadly as outright cruelty. He stopped walking and looked back once more at the broken building silhouetted against the sky. A question lodged itself in his chest, heavier than any file or ledger he could carry. If walls can remember injustice, what excuse do we have to forget it? The recorder clicked off. And Mercy Hill fell quiet. For now.